been very powerful for a very long time. And what the precedent said from the 70s and before was essentially, if you work for the government and you have a union, they can take your money for union dues. And if you choose to opt out, they can still take your money, just not as much. Workers had no recourse, no choice. And there's been many cases, many efforts for decades now, and today was the day we finally turned the court the other way. 41 years of court precedent was overturned today.
Your name's John Tillman. You are the founder and CEO of the Illinois Policy Center. But at some point, you get involved in legal battles like the Janus case.
So when I first started this little effort in 2007, the original plan I wrote, we had planned to have a litigation center. I was a great admirer of the Institute for Justice, thought they did great work, and knew that litigation would be a shortcut path to taking advances that would be tough politically in Illinois. So the Illinois Policy Institute goes forward, does a traditional think tank role, and then we started the litigation center in 2011 to enhance our leverage in the process.
Let's go back to Governor Rauner and the planning that led to this moment.
So Governor Rauner was inaugurated in January of 2015, and he ran on reforming government unions. He's long been an advocate of unions. Nothing wrong with the union. He's not anti-union. What he is anti-union having monopoly control over the workers, and the workers not having control of their destiny, or not controlling their speech. And so what he advocated is that workers should be in charge of the relationship with the union, not the union bosses. And so when he got into office, he issued an executive order and then initiated a lawsuit to sue and have empower the government to stop collecting union dues or union fees from those who've opted out of the union. This, of course, immediately was litigated, as was expected. And in our conversations with the governor and others, we realized, and the governor realized, that he was going to get bounced from the case because he had no standing, because he didn't actually pay union dues. So we worked with the governor's team and some others, and we eventually all decided to intervene in that case. So the Liberty Justice Center, where I'm chairman, and the Illinois Policy Institute, where I'm the CEO, we worked together to eventually find Mark Janus.
So Mark has kind of become a bit of a pop star. I noticed his fans swarming him at the bottom of the court steps. You know Mark pretty well. What's his deal?
Well, Mark's a Boy Scout, Matt, literally. Now, how often do you meet a Boy Scout that goes all the way to the Supreme Court? So he was an Eagle Scout growing up, and then he was a Scout Master and was very involved in helping young men and eventually young men and women learn about scouting and help build people into great young adults. And so he's very funny and delightful, self-effacing. I asked him what he was going to do when he got home. He said, I'm going to mow my lawn. It's really getting long, because he's been gone so much traveling for this effort. I think the most important part about him that has made him amazing is he's a principle-driven guy, and that's perhaps some of his scouting, or maybe he became a scout because he was principle-driven. He's thought through these issues, that he doesn't control his relationship with his union, he doesn't control his speech rights. It just seemed absurd to him, and he was ready when we came a call and said, yeah, I'm in and I'm all in. And he's a guy who's a finisher, and he finished today.
Let's take a step back, because I think a lot of people watching this can't imagine the absurdity of law before today that allowed public unions to take money from workers without their permission, without their consent. Is that really how it worked?
So the idea was the Abood Case, which is the precedent that was overturned in Janus versus AFSCME, said that they can't take your political speech money. So that part they'll carve out. Whatever the union does in terms of political speech, you're exempt from. But of course, the union says we hardly do any politics. Nothing we do is politics. Everything we do is collective bargaining and negotiating on your behalf. That's like 80% of what we do, which of course is a fraud. And so that had been history, though. So really bad precedent has been changed, and now we're looking forward, not just 41 years, but perhaps 100 years of changing the country's future for the better.
Ultimately, Judge Alito and the majority of the court threw this practice out on First Amendment grounds, unconstitutional. Explain to folks what that means.
So the basic idea is, and long precedent of the court, is that not only do you have a right to speak, more importantly in this case, you have a right to not be compelled to speak. So if you worked for a company, let's say, and your company said, you must take this political position and we're going to force you to go chanting for a candidate you don't like, everybody sees that that's absurd. And what's different about this is maybe you're not speaking, but they're taking money from you against your will to pay for somebody else to speak on your behalf, and you haven't asked them to do it. That's the essence of this case, and that was the essence of what Alito said, and it should have never been allowed in the Abood case from 1977.
They're not going to take this lying down. There was I thought, a fairly shocking editorial in the New York Times today calling for a more radical response by the unions, more confrontation. Where do we go next with this?
I think this is one of the most important questions and issues pertaining to the result of this case. Here's what I think people need to pay attention to. Think about if you like a Starbucks, or if you like an Italian restaurant down the street, or where you might buy your car, your next car. Think about how that business treats you. They're recruiting you. They're selling you that you're going to get a fair exchange of goods for services in exchange for the money you provide them. And you have free will to go in and out of that business anytime you want. Wouldn't it be amazing if the unions took this case and said, you know, I'm going to become like Starbucks. I'm going to let the walls come down and let people choose, and I'm going to be so great at serving them that we're going to actually do better.